Hello, I would like to genuinely like to hear your full perspectives on upscaling motion clarity and what aspects are actually most important. Since PS5 professional coverage started, there have been many cases even recently where PSSR demonstrated obviously superior motion clarity to other upscaling solutions, but Digital Foundry seem to acknowledge this but downplay this fact and recommend other options based on how the still shots look. This has baffled many outside observers in the community. After all, aren't games mostly played in motion, especially since motion clarity has so frequently been a pain point in modern games and is even the most common reason TAA haters state why they abstain from it. So you've looked at a lot of PSSR titles, Oliver. What's your take on this?
Yes. So I would say that motion clarity is one factor among many, and we have discussed the superiority of PSSR in terms of motion clarity, in terms of that sharpness in motion with PSSR. But I also think that image stability and clarity at rest is very important. Other factors like disocclusion handling is important, handling of ray tracing, SSR, other kinds of effects, very important. So there are a lot of factors. I personally have a bit of a bias here. Everyone has biases, but like I play on TVs that are usually a little bit laggier, and I like motion blur. So to me, clarity and motion matters a little bit less to me personally. But any kind of popping or fizzling the image, aliasing artifacts, those annoy me. Any instability at rest annoys me. And then also keep in mind that in motion, it's harder to evaluate image clarity. So image clarity in stills, easier to see than image clarity in motion. You might be distracted by other things. You're distracted by the movement. You're not seeing the softness so much. That's why, historically speaking, when, DRS was more punishing in games before you had temporal upscalers, the idea was, well, in motion, you won't really notice the softness in the image when we turn on the DRS, when we kick it in. That was kind of part of the rationale behind it. And I think that certainly was the case, that people did not notice those kinds of apparent dips and deficits in image sharpness. But everyone will have their own preferences. If I'm evaluating a game with PSSR and I have enough time to look at image quality in detail, I will point out things that I think are relevant to the viewer. I will try to point out image clarity in motion. I'll point out all these other issues to the extent that I have time. And that will be colored by my own views and biases to some degree in the way that I convey it and the way that I prioritize those things. But I will try to give all information to the viewer. I will try to give you enough information, enough visuals, so you can make up your own mind. If you have a different set of priorities to mine, that's perfectly fine. Everyone has their own priorities when it comes to image quality. PC gamers have a different set of priorities. Console gamers have a different set of priorities. OLED owners have a different set of priorities. LCD owners have a different set of priorities, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on all day. But, it's just kind of like this kind of chain of what do you want to prioritize, what do you think is good, and PSSR does better in some aspects than others. I think that's quite clear, and image clarity and motion is one of the areas where it's kind of exceptional among upscalers. It does a very good job among upscalers.
Yeah, Alex, what do you think about this? I guess the other thing, of course, is that when dealing with motion clarity, you're also dealing with the quality of the actual display you're watching it on, bearing in mind the whole sample and hold phenomenon with flat panels. But curious what you think about this question.
Oliver pointing out he's on an LCD is important, but I'd also say that even like an OLED is insufficient, for all these purposes. Like as soon as anything's still moving, you're still getting a persistence issue without a strobe display. So especially at something like 60 hertz, even more so at 30 hertz. So I think the macro image look of something while it is moving, like the camera is turning, is very important. And one thing we've seen with PSSR in the past is that there's been as the camera is moving, at times there's been moments of intense flicker among post-processing elements in the screen. And that's something that Oliver quite obviously finds distracting. And I agree with his sentiment there, because that is a macro image. It's you can't avoid that. Yes, maybe the one moving thing has a better alias line on it or something. I don't know, or vice versa, or maybe it's especially clear. But if the entire image has other things that cause strobe effects, one thing that I always try and do with a game, and it's a little bit weird, but so when you look at something straight on, I think due to persistence, you can start ignoring certain effects. But as soon as you look at something less straight on, I think peripheral vision is more attuned, at least in our mind's eye, to issues of persistence. If I agree, with that? Is that the way around? Yeah, but either way, you can start seeing like tons of flicker sometimes. Like if you look directly at a CRT screen, sometimes you don't see the flicker, but if you turn your eye to the right or left from the screen, it starts flickering like crazy. And that's a subjective thing. But sometimes when you're playing a game and you've been playing it for so long, you don't realize actually how many problems there are with a lot of the visual aspects of it. And only if you bring in other examples or look at it a different way, then you start noticing it. So that's kind of cool. One of the great things about PC is you don't just have one or two image treatments. You've got a whole bunch. And as soon as you bring in a bunch of other image treatments, you can actually say, hey, maybe actually this image treatment type does something poor in comparison to this. And that's something you don't always have the luxury of on console. So that's another thing. You may be just used to something that is actually, in comparison to other things, not as good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also interesting, of course, that on PlayStation 5 Professional, a lot of games are offering the choice between upscalers, specifically because, PSSR as yet isn't like a one-size-fits-all perfect solution.